Anyway, Kyle in Missoula, thanks for calling the show.
Hi. Yeah, you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're on the air.
Yeah, I was curious about both you. Is Jeff there today?
Jeff is not here yet. I'm not sure if he's actually going to make it or not, so I'm kind of flying on my own for now.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, I was curious about your. I've heard you describe your stance on free will in the past as maybe sort of leaning towards compatibilism. But I've heard an argument from Sam Harris, which I find more powerful than any other argument I found for something of that gravity. I've used it against, a Mormon, my Christian grandfather, and also, a biology student, and they've all been convinced within inside of like an hour.
So the weird thing about this is, back when I was doing nonprofits with Jeff and Russell and Dennis, we did like a 3.5-hour show where we debated free will amongst ourselves. I think that they have redone that recently, so I'm kind of sorry Jeff's not here. Most of us, with the exception of Dennis, have identified primarily as compatibilists, agreeing basically with Daniel Dennett on the subject of free will. I've read Sam Harris's book on free will. I don't have any objections to his argument. I agree with it pretty much in its entirety. And in that little booklet, Sam, his only objection to compatibilism is that he doesn't understand what compatibilists are saying. And he even notes this. He says, I don't really kind of get what it is that they're claiming. And he thinks it's a bit of a cheating with definitions. And I think he's right, and I don't actually have a problem with that. I think I can still pretty much identify as a compatibilist. For those people who are going, what the hell are they talking about? So the question of whether or not we actually have free will is somewhat dependent on how you define free will. And there's a bunch of different notions in philosophy. I think all of us are in agreement that we don't have the sort of libertarian free will that would be touted by various religions. And my favorite book on the subject is probably Elbow Room by Dennett. But I love Sam's book on free will, and I would agree that in the sense that the free will as Sam is basically refuting it, I agree we don't have that.
Yeah, so, I would basically, he sort of argues against the free will because people like Dennett and compatibilists say that determinism is compatible with a conception of free will.
Yes.
But definitely the one that Sam Harris or I would argue against is that, our futures aren't determined. They're not chosen by chance. They're not chosen by a god or some other entity. But we're actually the ones sort of creating them at any moment. And the way that you argue against that one is both by neuroscience, obviously, with determinism. But, you can also get the other way around without solving which of those is choosing.
Sure, but I agree with that.
Yeah, okay. So, and you can get around any of those, though, by just saying, I'm just going to alert the audience because I really have never heard anybody else talk about this argument. You really can get all around those without even determining which of those it is. It's just by saying that, every thought that you have simply appears in your mind. And then most people don't really realize this. But, think of the phrase cross your mind. Every single thought that you have simply crosses your mind. You can't really take credit for any of these thoughts. Anything you do with them depends on other thoughts that appeared in the exact same way. So I don't really see, and I also think that's a little bit in conflict with compatibilism because it sort of says that, even though we don't really have free will, even though our futures are really determined, we sort of have to act in a way sort of conducive to an idea of free will so that we have, moral attachments to each other and things. But when it's really hitting you that close to home, I don't really think that you can just, close your eyes.
I don't know what you mean there at the end, but like I said, I'm almost entirely in agreement with what Sam says. My thing is that what Dennett talks about is compatibilism. Is he talks about what kind of free will do people want to have? What is it that makes this worth discussing in the first place? Because, and I'm going to agree with Dennett here, or kind of even go further than Dennett does, in that I don't really care. I don't know the various free will concepts. It doesn't really matter to me whether we have them or not. So this idea that we need to act as if we have free will, well, if we don't have free will, then we need to act, or we're going to act however we act no matter what. So, there's no sense in encouraging people to act in a certain way other than We didn't choose, for example, to encourage them. But if we do, then we're going to keep acting that way out of choice. But it doesn't matter to me, because what I deal with is the actual actions that agents take, and it doesn't matter whether this was an act of volition where they made not just a conscious choice, but an act of will to take this action. That doesn't matter as to how we react to it, because you still have a thinking agent who did something, and that action has consequences, and that's what we need to focus on.
Okay. Well, I guess I would say that, what is going on in their mind, I would say that even if free will doesn't exist, justice isn't really a good concept, because, really you're just getting back at somebody. You're basically enjoying, harming them because they harmed somebody else.
Well, I don't think that, first of all, you're looking at you're saying justice is this idea of harming someone because they harmed somebody else. And I think that's kind of a simplistic idea of justice that I reject.
Not necessarily physically. I would say that, justice is, you do this and you get this done to you. You spend this many years in jail. And obviously that, as a practical concern, that's fine. But I think when you think about the fact that each of their thoughts simply appears in their mind, that all of their mental states, and they can see this any moment, all of their mental states simply appear in their mind. Anything they're predisposed to, they can see it in one moment once they realize it.
Well, I think part of the problem is the language that I will say we, but at this moment primarily you are using, which is something appears in their mind. And so there's this kind of dualistic look at them and their mind. And I would say that they are, in fact, their mind. And that's what we're dealing with, is an agent, a mind that produced this action. And we measure our responses based on practicality. It's, it may be a necessity to lock somebody up to prevent them from doing harm to themselves and others. And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with us doing it even if we didn't make a conscious decision to do it. Because one of the things that we do know is, irrespective of whether we have will or free will, our brains create a complex matrix of beliefs that affect the decisions that we make. And so how we react to things in certain situations will dictate how we're going, or affect how we're going to react in other situations as well. So to the extent that we have the ability to guide our destinies at all, it's in our best interest to make those decisions and encourage in society those decisions that produce the best results, and encourage others to change the way, other brains make decisions towards better results.
Okay, exactly. I would use the phrase "our minds" in exactly the same sense that you just used the phrase "our brains." They are us. It's just grammatically, it's not exactly simple.
Yeah, the language is all really sloppy on this. And I apologize, Kyle, but I don't think we're going to disagree much. And I've got some theists on the line and a bunch of stuff to get to before the show's over. So I'm going to let you go. And maybe if Jeff D comes in, or you can drop an email to tv@atheist-community.org and get some thoughts from some others.
All right.
Thanks.
All right.